Hi, my name is Anne, and I'm from France. Today I'm going to tell you my amazing story. It may seem to you like the plot of a romantic series. You might even think I'm making it up. And I understand you. It's not every day that a humble, hardworking girl falls in love with a millionaire and he falls in love with her. But believe me, that's exactly what happened to me. Subscribe and put a thumbs up if you're interested in how I went from being a janitor to a millionaire. Oops, seems like enough spoilers for the first few minutes. Well, my adventures began with the move. My mother and I came to this town about a month ago. The occasion was very sad. My parents realized they could no longer live under the same roof and decided to divorce. Mom didn't want to stay in a town where every house, every sign reminded her of her failed marriage. So we packed our bags and hit the road. I got a job at a little cafe in a quiet neighborhood. I really liked that neighborhood. There were old two-story houses and so many flowers. The cafe was on a corner and had a very cozy terrace with red and yellow roses. I was very lucky. I was going to work with pleasure. Mostly locals came to our cafe, so everyone knew each other. "Good afternoon, Mr. Barry." I said hello to my guest, smiling. "How are you doing? What can I get you?"
Hello, sweetheart. I'm fine, thank you. I'll have the usual, coffee and your wonderful croissants.
The man didn't even look at the menu because he kept getting the same thing. I even wondered how he wasn't getting tired of eating croissants every day. As I was picking up the order, I felt someone watching me. I looked around the room, and all the guests were minding their own business, and no one was looking in my direction. Then I noticed another guest. He was sitting in the far corner of the terrace, so I didn't see him at first, and he was a stranger to me. When I went to the table to take the order, I noticed that the stranger was dressed very well, and it surprised me, but I didn't want to be distracted from my work because of such trivialities. I brought him an orange juice with ice and a piece of cake, and I was about to leave when the young man said, "You're very nice." His compliment embarrassed me a little, and I blushed. Thank you. "We'll meet again," he said as I left. Before I went home, I gathered the chairs from the terrace and closed the cafe. Suddenly, Miller, my boyfriend, came up to me and hugged me from behind. We'd been dating for a few weeks, and we'd met when I first came to town.
"Hey, Anna," he said. "I thought I'd walk you out. It's dark after all."
Then he pulled a rose out of my hair, which I had attached there.
"I hate roses."
The guy wrinkled his nose. I loved roses. And we headed home. On the way home, Miller talked about his day, about his plans, about what he'd had for breakfast. Suddenly I realized that he hadn't once asked me how I was doing, how I was feeling. His chatter gave me a headache, and I was even glad when he left. "You can't do that, Anna. He is, after all, your boyfriend," I said to myself as I opened the door. My mother was sitting in the kitchen waiting for me. Dinner was already on the table. She saw my worried and tired expression. "Is something wrong? Are you okay?" I told her about my day, ending with a mention about Miller. "Your father was the same way. I didn't notice it at first, but over the years it made me more and more upset. You know how it ended." "Of course I do. Divorce." My mother advised me to break up with Miller, but I decided to hold off on that for now. The next day was my day off. I went to the mall. I wanted to please myself and buy a new dress. I chose a beautiful blue color, which is very suitable for my eyes. I put it on right away because Miller and I were going out on a date, and only half an hour was left until the appointed time. I decided to stop by my favorite bakery to get something to eat. I sat at one of the tables drinking my coffee and looking at the guests. One in particular caught my eye because he looked so much like my boyfriend. I looked closely. It was Miller! But why was he hugging some black-haired girl? I didn't know what I was doing, so I walked over to the couple. "Who is it, honey?" the brunette asked in surprise. "Honey?" I asked again. "Why are you calling him that?" "Isn't it obvious? He's my boyfriend." "Miller's my boyfriend!" I exclaimed. The stranger and I looked at each other, then stared at Miller. What is this supposed to mean?
"I couldn't choose, so I started dating both of you. What, does anyone have a problem with that?"
"Of course!" in one voice we shouted. I was so angry. I trusted him. He was my first boyfriend, and I managed to fall in love. I ran out of the cafe in tears. I didn't know how I ended up in the park, in the business part of town. I sank down on the bench and covered my face with my hands.
What happened, Miss Rose?
The voice sounded familiar. I pulled my hands away from my face, looked up, and saw the rich guest from the cafe. Miss Rose? That's not my name.
The rose in your hair looked very beautiful.
The young man sat down beside me and handed me a handkerchief.
I told you we would meet.
I smiled. He really did say that. A few days later, I quit the cafe. I didn't like being in a place where my ex-boyfriend had breakfast every